brain fart. US, where are you? Oh my God.
Outside Philadelphia.
Outside Philly, that was it. I knew it was always, whenever you told me that, I was like, that's so cool, because it's one of the places I haven't been. But I'm 8 o'clock in the morning here, and I've already spent I've seen 2 renditions of my 6-year-old's Christmas dance to Rocking Around the Christmas Tree this morning. Oh. So, you know, when you're talking about keeping it real, that's been my morning so far. So excuse my brain fart then.
No problem at all.
As people join us, I'd love for you to just pop into the comments where you're dialing in from, or say hello, because just so you know, Robin and I can't see that you're here until you say hello to us. So, you know, whilst we're quite happy having a chat between us, it would be, you know, obviously great to see you guys as you log in, and I've got the comments box open, so you know, please kind of say hello. But as people log in, Robin, I'll do an introduction about myself, because nobody really cares too much about me, or they're used to me by now. But, you know, welcome. Really great to have everybody on board. I'm the VP of Employer Brand and Communications, Employer Brand Work. And for those of you who don't know me, I have worked across Employer Brand, culture and comms for around 15 years, and I have done it through the GFC. I have done it through COVID. I have been both laid off and, you know, found new roles. So I think, you know, I've got to a point we've all been through this experience. And, you know, when we were talking about doing this session, for me, it was super important. The way you treat people matters, and it matters because of the experience people have, whether they leave you right now or whether they remain. And it should matter to you, and it should matter to business, because you may want them to come back, and you also want those people that remain to stay. Easier kind of said than done. So that's going to be the topic sort of our discussion today. Please, as I said, through the comments, feel free to post your comments. We will, if there's an appropriate time, I will sort of pause our narrative or conversation, or we will absolutely get them through at the end. But, you know, please post comments either on LinkedIn or, and we will get them through. They'll feed through. So, you know, we're still in a time that nobody's really been able to predict with certainty, and everything at the moment is still uncharted. So we're still trying to, you know, really figure stuff out. We saw the growth of tech and new industries over the last couple of years, and sadly, not all business decisions were necessarily correct, because I said it's unpredictable times, and we're still trying to figure out that stuff. So, you know, but however, having said that, even if an organization made the wrong decisions, there's a way that organizations can be super thoughtful as we figure this out, so that we can retain good talent and continue to engage with good talent. So today we'll be talking about the role of employer brands and employee experience, and how they can impact the relationships, both with the colleagues exiting an organization and with colleagues that remain. Employer brand has a unique view and relationship across all of the business. And so we're really able to facilitate the communications to external candidates, to those leaving, to current employees, to HR, and to people teams. I think we have a responsibility to make sure everyone's being thoughtful in the communication. And I really believe that employer brand leaders can influence the people experience in communications, both internally and externally. And that is why we're chatting to the wonderful, wonderful Robin Dagostino, who I love very much. She's Global Branding and Marketing Director at Boston Consulting Group. And she's worked on both sides of these layoffs. So at SAP, where she was working through a large-scale layoff, and now at BCG, where she's actually working with organizations to help pivot their strategies to meet the demands of the changing market. So, you know, I think she's got an incredible view of where we are now. So welcome, Robin.
Oh, thank you, Elle. I liked what you were saying earlier about I really believe that an employer brand is not just attracting talent, right? It's because that might be a huge part of it. Obviously, the majority of employer brand personnel work in recruiting per se, but you have to ensure the promise that you make to external talent is met once they start at the organization, once they are there for 10 years, 2 years, 30 years, whatever those circumstances are, and that they speak well even after they leave the organization, to your point. So boomerangs are super important. and so many other kind of aspects within the overall candidate journey. Totally believe in that.
Yeah, 100%. So I think, and I think we'll cover some of that today, because I think that's kind of going to be the core of everything we're talking about. So I would like to start sort of high level, sort of, I want to say bird's eye view, but with a name like Robin, is that a really bad pun that I'm not allowed to do at this time in the morning? But from your perspective, what is the shift, and what have you seen at BCG? What's the shift within organisations? What has it been as people start preparing to do business differently in changing times? Because I believe that people can forgive things that are beyond control or the wrong decisions if the situation is managed with thought and compassion. So I would love to get some of your insight that you're seeing with organizations about how people are advising and talking, with the fundamental shift that organizations are seeing.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely facing economic uncertainty, right? But at the same time, the labor market is still competitive and businesses are still struggling with skill shortages. So that is first and foremost. And I think you mentioned uncharted waters. Absolutely, we're swimming. We're all swimming in the deep end in terms of, but even with all these challenges ahead, companies still need to innovate. They still need to transform. They still need to provide great experiences, whether it's candidate experiences or customer experiences, to thrive in a competitive market. And talent is the one who's going to do that. So if you're going to have to, unfortunately, whatever your environment is, and halt in terms of hiring, those are, you're still going to have to make sure that you prioritize, you reskill, you redeploy, you look at the gaps and areas of opportunities. Absolutely, it's critical. And to answer your question, I think those that are affected in the tech sector, they'll likely be redeployed in the legacy businesses that are starting to begin their digital transformations. I definitely think that we'll see a lot more of that moving forward.
Robin,
sorry.
Oh no, I love that bit. It's fun. I've got somebody that somebody they'll know. I'm going to say she's a she. I'm trying not to identify our listeners. She's had flu last week, and I said hello this morning. And it's funny because I know she's an EB leader at a massive like FMCG consumer organization. I think really keen on it, that innovation and trying to hire good talent. And that point you just made there is the key piece for me at the moment, is that companies still need to innovate. So even if we're seeing a loss of these tech folk from these great tech organizations, and I've never been fearful of being slightly controversial, but I kind of think this is the time for us to get our head out of tech as an industry and start seeing tech as a function within the broader industries. Yes. And for these organizations to think this is a really epic, and for our employer brand folks, this is a really epic opportunity for us to start hiring these people that might not normally consider us. I think we've veered off a little bit there, but I think that's super, super important.
Yes. And it's a huge opportunity for some people that you can look into it, and talent that you never even thought would be possible. Now you can secure them, which is a very fortunate situation from legacy brands. Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure.
Amazing. Now, what I don't want to do is give the fair if we think about the point of today about how we communicate to those sort of people exiting the business or remaining in the business. But I think that, really, really is important when we start thinking how and what can we do, or employer brand experience people do, to support the communication and experience leaving a business. And for the first thing, I would sort of look at that. The answer for that is that exactly that point, like chances are the people leaving the business are going to find another role. And if they're good talent, you might want to get them back one day.
Yeah. I think, going back to your statement earlier, like fear of unknown creates a culture of change, right? And if there is that unknownness, then people change. People look for alternative options, especially that great talent out there. So can't emphasize enough the importance of internal communications, external communications, your managers just saying, hey, we don't know what's going to happen with our future, but this is what I do know. And having that trust and authenticity with your team really matters, with your company, with your firm, with your department, whatever that might be, to try to create that stability and that trust within the ecosystem, I think is super important to call out.
So is there a case for us to go back to the business and say, actually, should organizations be communicating now before layoffs? Like, let's even think, like, let's not be knee-jerk or reactionary, because we could sit here and say what we know is that if somebody's leaving an organization, what do you do to help them? And we'll look at that. People that are remaining, what do you do to help them? But actually, should we take a step back again and say, actually, in this market, should we be looking at employee communications as a whole and have some honest communication about there aren't going to be any layoffs? So we hope they're not going to be a layoff. So, maybe we should alleviate that fear of the unknown as much as possible.
Yes, I think transparency is how you build trust, is how you build sustainability. Absolutely, as much as possible. And frankly, that's what anybody wants in life, right? If you're getting into a personal relationship, if you're working with for businesses, whatever that might be, you want to know that you can rely on somebody. And candidates have been asking since day one, tell me the good and the bad and the ugly about the company. Right. Just like the same thing as an employee, I want to know what's happening. And the fact that going dark is really the last thing that you should do. You need to be as honest and straightforward as you can.
Yeah, I like going dark is the last thing you should do. You're so right. And if we apply that to people, let's start like high level. If somebody's, there's going to be a bunch of people that have left a business. And you're right, going dark is not what we should be doing. If we think about the effort we go to attract them to the business, is what you're saying at the beginning, I think there should be an element that organizations have programs in place to keep communicating to potentially the people that have left the business. And I've seen it done well in terms of people even getting their permission to post spreadsheets of people's names and email addresses of the people they're going to let go. And like it being a mass reference of saying these are great people, like, please hire them. I was talking to somebody the other day who got let go from a tech company, and they had nothing but good things to say about the experience they've had, and they understood what was happening. Of course, they're devastated, but they left with a personal reference from the CEO, of saying, I will absolutely be a reference for you. And then I think about, and I'm really sorry, I know we've talked about it a lot, but I think about the Twitter experience where they got an email either to your work or your personal address, and it was signed by Twitter. Like, I'm sorry to bring that up, but the chalk and cheese between how you communicate to people leaving this business, who are also friends of the people still left in the business. So it's not like you can just push them out the door or not say anything. It's like that experience is still internal and external. And how you make people feel will go so far.
We have to continue to remember we're in the human business, and as human that we can be is so important to our overall success as an organization, for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when we think about sort of people leaving the business, we can know things like you could set up like alumni groups or groups on LinkedIn where you can start sharing, asking what they can do. And I love the outpouring of love on LinkedIn and the support and people bumping feeds when people are left off. And I think employer brand can perhaps work with or help HR put those programs in place and help communicate what actually exists. What kind of support there is, and often these are knee-jerk reactions as well, so maybe there's not time to set up systems. But going back to what you were saying, there's a lot of other organizations who could really have value with these people, so with these folk that are being left off. So I think the more we can engage and help them do that, the more value there will be in their lives that you can leave them with. But however, on the flip side, there's looking at the people that are left behind who are now worried if they're next or what their workload might look like. And you already mentioned mentioned earlier, this is taking the opportunity to build a culture of open, honest communication. What can we do? What should we be encouraging business stakeholders to do to have that communication and help the people that are left behind?
Well, I think just first and foremost is you could open up a virtual call, you can have an in-person call and just say, open mic, ask me anything. And you can schedule the questions in advance so you can kind of get a preview and prep the leadership team for how to best to respond in your role as an employer brand. but also just be ready to be able to have that question. Just having that forum first and foremost, I think goes a long way. And I know that that's something that we implemented at my last company, and it really was very welcomed and appreciated because it was more so of a need to know type of culture. And then we instituted that, and it was like, wow, you're actually listening to me. And I would also leverage a lot of platforms that are third-party resources, right? Like it could be Fishbowl, it could be Blind, it could be other different types of review sites. Are a great way to really listen and hear what your employees are talking about, because they might not feel comfortable in your other channels within your company or organization that they can share and be authentic. And really making sure you're looking at both is, I think, super critical. And you can use lots of tools. There's free tools, there's paid for tools to help you aggregate all of that data and just try to streamline of what the kind of key messages are and trends. But it's pretty clear when you look at any of them where your pain points are and where the areas of opportunity are, for sure.
Robin, that's super helpful. I love the idea of that, of the social listening internally, because they may not feel safe within the organization to have that conversation.
Which is a shame, but it's sometimes the reality. So,
do you know what? Even in these times, not everyone feels safe talking at work about work. Like that's been a whole other topic, psychological safety. Layer this on top of it, and it's absolutely compounded. My last question for you before we hand over to folks for questions and I can start seeing them come in is, what kind of formal strategies have you seen work to engage and retain people in these times from sort of a comms and EB perspective?
Oh, it's a great question. I think that, it always depends. There's no one size fits all, and it really has to be kind of customized. But I think you have to always think about, and we've learned that from some of the tech layoffs and the reasons why some tech layoffs is you have to build and develop an agile workforce to create a sustainable plan of action. And that includes contingent workers, redeployed, just upskilling, dealing with redundancies, which a lot of large organizations have versus smaller organizations have. And again, focus on experiences, because people choose an employer or a product or a brand for the functional as well as the emotional needs. And that's very clear in EVP attributes that you look at is, yes, you want compensation, obviously, and to be great benefits, but you also want a lot of emotional attributes that really matter to you as for your professional career. And the same goes in all different aspects. And so making sure that you're looking at both, I think is super important as much as, and having empathy and making sure that you're really listening as much as possible and not just like, okay, this is what we're going to say. This is what legal says that we should say. And I love legal.
I shouldn't laugh, but you're so right.
We have to think like human beings and how you need to be treated as a person.
I knew there's a reason I love you. Now everyone's going to love you. But I think you're right. It's treating people as humans, having empathy. And I think our roles can be to go back to the business and say, how would you feel? How would you like to be treated? What do you want to hear? And getting people, I think, shift the way businesses are thinking about how they engage with people. And we actually had a question here from Kirsten, which you kind of actually just answered there, which was, what's your opinion on people moving into the gig economy after a layoff? And I actually think as you were talking and that question came up, it kind of just answered it there, because exactly that, the people, the skills are changing so much that there's a different value on people moving into the gig economy and doing 6 months here or 4 months there. And yes, again, a lot of these layoffs are about the bottom line, right? And about right sizing, about spending cash in make it last for a longer amount of time and things like that. But it's not personal. And so it's not necessarily about their skills, right? Mm-hmm. So to answer sort of Kirsten's question, I'm like, I think there's a strong argument for that.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of the gig economy, to be honest. And it depends on your personal needs, but it provides a significant amount of flexibility. And let's be honest, when you work at some companies or organizations, there are projects you might not want to work at. But if you're in the gig economy, you have the right to say yes or no. And that's that's something that is a true benefit of the organization. I am seeing, though, I would like to call out is we're seeing talent, especially in our market research, and a lot of companies are validating this, that are looking for more and more organizations to provide that stability. And that is something that I would definitely call out, is that, yes, a gig economy, and you need to have a diverse portfolio when you think about your workforce, and gig should be a critical part of it, but would also call out more and more talent's desires are around stability and job security, which I'm definitely.
Robin, that's a really valuable insight for us all, because if I look back 10 years when we started building sort of EPs, stability, security was
the bottom.
Kind of always maybe not, yeah, exactly. Like maybe 6, the lower sort of 30 percentile, like it wasn't that important. In certain regions, cultural regions, yes, it was always up top, but as a whole, it was always at the bottom. So it's really interesting then, sort of the juxtaposition between the rise of the gig economy, but yet from a value prop, more people are, as you say, talking about or looking for stability. So, and I've actually been talking to a few organizations around the move of, and we sort of talk about it with some of our customers at the Martec as well, around, promoting communications and talking about the value prop to contingent workforce. And we actually, when you have that spark, and we've actually seen quite a bit of that as well, that people started talking about what's our contingent EVP. Because it may be we understand that, and maybe we can give you 6 months or 12 months, or building out the programs, we move you internally and projects. And I almost think, because going back to what you said right at the beginning about companies still need to innovate, but innovation also has a timeline, and it tends to be sprint or project based, whether you're tech or whether you're a project manager, or whatever that looks like. So I think then, as EB practitioners, I think, what is the contingent EVP in that space for that workforce? And again, going back to the subject matter of today, is people are exiting an organization. Maybe this is time to look at that and look at your sort of, you said silver medalists or boomerang hires or contingent, and start thinking, okay, we need to look outside of the traditional value props, because I think, the insight you're seeing has just shown us that's changing significantly.
Yeah. I'm in a very, very fortunate position. And I do think that the company that I work for now at BCG is extremely unique. We have an amazing alumni program, and we actually offer, doesn't matter if you left us 30 years ago or you left us yesterday, is that they actually help you find a job at another organization. And I think that's pretty cool. And I'm seeing a lot more companies do that nowadays, but that was a nice attribute that is unique in some tech sector, or some sectors or industries as a whole. But I think that we're seeing more and more companies do those types of things, which is fantastic. So if you leave us, totally fine, we understand. But let us help you find a job somewhere else, wherever your desires are and your passion points are, which is sort of interesting.
No, I think, and I've seen that happen in at the beginning of COVID, and also in GFC here in Australia, where we've got a really tight labour market. So it'd be, I think that's one of the most valuable things that people can do. I also do want to note that also in our industry as well, it's not just tech folk with those skills. It's the tech organizations that hired, whether it's customer success, whether it's EB. Like, I don't want anyone to feel we're only talking about tech people, but I still do go back to piece around, how you communicate to them, but also about the value that that people that have experienced working in the tech industry, where innovation was day to day, can bring to the healthcare industry, to consumer industries, to retail that's being shifted on its head. Like, I think, there could be something for employers to also help them understand the projects they worked on, what they did. I think people need to remember their value as well. I think that's the key thing. Just because they're being laid off, it doesn't diminish their value. It likely meant that their skills were high in demand 2 years ago, and they're still high in demand, just somewhere else. But sort of, we're kind of wrapping up on time here. So if anyone's got any more questions, please, ping them. But there's a lot of talk on LinkedIn. I think, Robin, this is such, there's so much talk about this that I've got one of the key things I took from what you were saying right at the beginning was, which I think we know, labor market is still tight. We're talking about a recession or a downturn of the market in certain industries, and people just global, we're trying to right side at the moment.
Yes.
But the labor market is still tight. It's just been very uneven recently.
Yes.
And then the second thing is that, which means it's going to right side. So that's your argument back to the business about why you need to engage really well and nurture and talk and communicate and help support the people that are leaving. Second point was, we just said companies still need to innovate, including the organizations that have let people go. So again, that's when you go back to the business, say, this is why we need to work to retain our good people who may be trying to move over to a more secure industry. We are at fear of leaving them. So how do we make them feel they're as safe as we can promise that, and get, build loyalty and help them help us as a business humanize us and have empathy, which you said. And then the third thing you said right at the beginning was, which we sort of touched on again, but again, for us as EB people going back to the business and saying why you have to invest in human communication and empathy, is there is still a skills gap, and that skills gap is still only widening. So you may want those people back as an organization. You definitely want to retain good people, and you still will need to continue to bring people into the organization. And I always think, there's a way that organizations be super thoughtful as we figure this out, so that you can still engage with the old talent, retain good talent, engage with, continued, good talent. And I think we have a responsibility, and organizations right now have a responsibility, that nobody goes out into market if they've lost their job, if they're uncertain about their job, or if they don't get a new role. It's our responsibility to ensure that nobody feels less of themselves right now.
No way. It's no representation. Just like if you don't get picked for a job that you applied for, it's no representation that you just could be that one person has just that slight edge. Or even just if you get into a college or university and you didn't get into that one, they might have a slight edge, but there's no representation of you as an individual, and you're not talented in your own right. And it just wasn't meant to be at that particular things. And we've all been there. We've all gotten our, positives and negatives or feedback in terms of it, but you just have to find your right niche. And there are so many jobs out there, and there's so many amazing, talented people people are looking for, to your point.
And so somebody who should know, who is seeing what's happening in the market. So Robin, thank you so much. I really have to end this session by saying, don't be the Twitter. Listen to Robin. Be human, have empathetic. It's our role to help the organizations, and please don't be a Twitter. Don't have a sign off saying Twitter. Like, we can do this, folks, and we can do it well. As always, if we didn't get to your question, please ping us on the LinkedIn chat, ping us at Employer Bandwagon. The other thing is to say that we will be promoting an event with some of our partners shortly for the new year, that's actually specifically so we're partnering with smart recruiters who are going to be setting up sessions, trying to bring in a lot of their talent to their customers and find all these talent that have been laid off. I will get all the details to you. We're going to post them and promote it through our community. So if any of you are, losing people or looking for people, please keep an eye out for that, because exactly that, we want it in these times. It's our responsibility to help good people find good companies and sort of be a match. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And I'm definitely, we're super glad to be supporting this industry to do it. So keep an eye out for that, and reach out if you have any questions. Robin, I hope you, if I don't speak to you again, have the best Christmas break. You deserve it.
Thank you. Have a great holiday too, and a happy new year.
Oh my gosh,
that's late, right?
Here's to 2023. Here's to being human and having empathy, and spreading the love of our industry and helping people where we can, and having hopefully a great year.
Oh, and thank you, everyone.